Hello and welcome. So today's video is going to be about some disappearances of some girls in London in the 1880s. On the 31st of January 1890, 14-year-old Amelia Jeff's parents sent her out to pick up a fish supper for the family's evening meal. The shop Amelia went to was only a quarter of a mile from her home on West Road in West Ham, London, but Amelia did not return home from the shop when she should have. Concerned, her parents went out searching for her. Unable to find her, they called in the police, but it would be 2 weeks before she was found. On the 14th of February, two police officers were searching some empty houses when they found Amelia's partially decomposed body lying in a cupboard. Amelia had been sexually assaulted and then strangled. But Amelia was not the first girl to go missing on West Road. In the early 1880s, Mary Seward and Eliza Carter both went missing, and even though the dress of one of the girls that had all of its buttons cut off had been found in West Ham Park, no trace of either of them had ever been found. 14-year-old Mary Seward was the first of the girls to go missing. She lived at 98 West Road with her parents and disappeared on the 13th of April 1881. She was 4 foot 6 inches tall, thin and pale with dark brown hair. Mary had been asked by her mother to help look for a 4-year-old boy who was missing. Mary left her house to help look for him at around 6 o'clock. The boy was brought home a short while later by some children, but Mary never returned home. Concerned, Mary's parents began to search for her. The police and neighbours joined in the search, but no trace of her could be found. By June 1881, Mary's parents had resigned themselves to the fact that Mary may have been taken by people traffickers. There had been a trafficking gang operating in the area for some time. The North Devon Journal said of Mary's disappearance, as a result of the publicity given to the mysterious disappearance of Mary Seward, aged 14 of West Road, West Ham, who has been missing from her home since 6 o'clock on the evening of the 13th of April last, a considerable amount of information has been obtained, leading to a belief that for some time past a systematic attempt at kidnapping young girls has been going on in the district. There can, it is said, scarcely be a doubt that the girl Seward had fallen victim to the prowlers. Indeed, Mary's father said that he had been told by a woman that she knew by sight of a man who would visit the area in order to procure young girls to send them abroad. This woman said that the man preferred girls aged between 12 and 15 years old and described him as being well dressed, but with coarse and common features, who looked like a foreign gypsy, who was sometimes accompanied by a well-dressed woman. The lady was certain that this man had been in the area around Easter time. Many people from the area began to come forward and tell of how their own children had been accosted by a man in the week before Easter, who had chased after them. Mrs. Hughes, who lived in the area that Mary had last been seen before her disappearance, told of how 2 days before Mary's disappearance that her daughter had come home frightened, saying that a man had come running out of some empty buildings and tried to grab her. Workers from the local docks also commented that they had heard about girls being approached by strange men and women who tried to get the girls to go with them by promising them good jobs abroad. Rewards were promised for any information on the whereabouts of Mary, £25 from the Secretary of State for the Home Department and £10 from Mary's father. Newspapers put out appeals, but no trace of Mary has ever been found. When she disappeared, Mary was wearing a black cord dress that opened down the front, a black cord apron, a small pink and white woolen shawl, black straw hat and buttoned boots. Mary's disappearance would have probably and sadly been forgotten as another disappearance in London if it wasn't for another disappearance that happened next year. On the 28th of January 1882, 13-year-old Eliza Carter vanished while staying with her sister on West Road. She is described as having a fair complexion with brown hair and blue eyes. She had been playing with a school friend, and when it became time to go home, Eliza's friend walked her almost to her home and then left her to walk the rest of the way, which is said to only be around 50 yards. But Eliza never made it home. Her sister reported her missing and a search was started. The next day, a boy who was walking through West Ham Park found a blue dress. All the buttons on this dress had been cut off. The dress was identified as having been worn by Eliza on the day that she disappeared. Police suspected that Eliza's dress had been removed so as to hide her identity. Permission was given for the pond in the park to be dragged in case Eliza was in there, but nothing was found in the water. Police also searched theatres, music halls, lodging houses, and homes for girls to try and find her. They believed that the same person who had taken Mary had also taken Eliza. When Eliza disappeared, she was wearing a navy blue dress, a white straw hat that was trimmed with slate-coloured satin, blue stockings, and high lace-up boots. She was also wearing small gold earrings with drops. The police search had been exhausting, but still, as like Mary, there was no sign of what had happened to Eliza. But soon there was a twist in Eliza's case. The Evening Standard newspaper reported that Eliza had not been playing with a friend before she went missing. It is not known where she was. After running an errand for her sister at 10:30 that morning, there were 7 hours where it is not known where Eliza was. At 5 o'clock, the newspaper reported, Eliza was seen by a friend. Eliza told her friend that she had been away all day, was scared of a man, and was afraid to go home. Eliza's friend started to walk Eliza home, and on their way were approached by a man who said to Eliza, "Hello, Eliza, how is your mother?" He then carried on his way. This man was described as tall with a high hat. Near Eliza's home, her friend left her. This was the last time Eliza had been seen. In 1883, it was thought that one of the missing girls had been found when a body was discovered in a box in an office on Goswell Road in London. On the 18th of January 1883, the manager of Carter, Patterson and Co., which was a well-known railway and general carriers in Goswell Road, London, noticed a horrible smell coming out of a box that they had been unable to deliver. The box, which measured 2 feet long, 18 inches high and 18 to 20 inches in breadth, had been deposited at the general shop Davis and Evans on the 11th of December 1882. The shop acted as a receiving office for the delivery company. The box was addressed to Mrs. Green, number 24 Abbey Road, St. John's Wood, NW. The address had appeared to have been written by a woman. The box was sent to the delivery office, but when they tried to deliver it to 24 Abbey Road, no one of that name lived there, so the box was returned to the delivery office. When the box was opened to find out why it was smelling, they found inside the decomposed body of a child. The child was a girl between 13 and 14 years old who had fair hair, was good looking, had excellent teeth, but was rather thin. The child was also 4 feet in height. There were no wounds on the body, so it was suspected that the girl had starved to death. The police did wonder whether the remains belonged to Mary or Eliza, so they asked the families of the 2 girls if they could identify the body, but neither family could. With the victim being unable to be identified as either of the girls, the police set about trying to find out who the girl was. One name put forward who the girl could possibly have been was Clara Sutton. She was 14 years old and had been adopted by Mrs. Farrell. She said that between the ages of 12 and 13, Clara had been in service. She had then left there and gone to live near West Ham Schools, where she became friends with Mary Seward. Mrs. Farrell said that in August 1882, a woman had come to her home saying that she had heard that Clara was out of a job and said that she had got her a place at Mrs. Young Guilford's lodge in Brentwood. Mrs. Farrell had written to the address she had been given but received no reply. She had not heard from Clara since. In February, the newspapers were reporting on a story given by a shop owner in West Ham. The woman who owned the shop told of how on the 5th of October 1882, a young girl had come into her shop asking for a job. The girl said that she had run away from home as her father beat her, and since her mother's death, she was afraid to go home. The woman gave the girl the address of a woman in Leighton, and this woman was so pleased with the girl that she offered her a job. The girl left the clothes that she had brought with her with the shop lady, telling her that she was going to tell her father she had found the job. A few days later, a woman came into the shop to collect the girl's clothes, saying that the girl's father would not allow her to go to the job and had locked her in her bedroom. The shop lady refused to give the clothes to the woman, so she went away. The lady that had given the girl the job turned up at the shop to find out why the girl had not started in her position. Together they wrote to the girl's address, and a short while later the woman came back demanding the girl's clothes. This time she said that the father had sent the girl to to a home where she would not be able to run away. The shop lady gave the girl's address to some journalists, and they went to her home to investigate. They found that the father had lived there but had recently moved. The police managed to track down the father and interview him. A report in the St. James Gazette said a police sergeant had an interview yesterday with the father of the girl referred to by the woman who keeps the registry office in West Ham and who was prevented by her relatives from going to a situation in Leighton. The father admits the truth of the statement but says that she was prevented from going to the situation because she had to go and live with her aunt. He says she is 16 years of age and that she had been a source of anxiety and trouble to him, but he had not heard of her being missing. Neither has he any reason to doubt that she is alive and well cared for. He could not then give the address at which the girl was living, but said he would ascertain it. Interestingly, the house that the girl and her father lived was in the street behind the shop where the box had been deposited. The house was also 5 minutes away from the place where the box could have been brought. So there has been bits of information from witnesses coming in as to what could have happened to the girls. One was from an army major who said that he had seen one of the girls being dragged through the streets of Portsmouth. She was being dragged through the streets by a woman who the army major actually thought might have been a man in disguise. Now, this army major actually wrote into a newspaper telling his story, and you're in for a treat because I'm going to read you that whole letter now. So, on the 12th of February 1844, Major P.F. Robinson wrote to the Daily News, "Sir, in your record of unpunished crimes that appeared in one of your pages a few days ago, you refer to the case of the unaccountable disappearances of two little schoolgirls, Mary Seward and Eliza Carter, which caused so strong an excitement to the east of London about 3 years ago. And you conclude your remarks on these cases as follows. Not a trace, however, of the whereabouts of either of these children, whose disappearances was separated by an interval of some months, has been brought to life. In reply to this statement, I should feel greatly obliged by your giving publicity to the following circumstances that came to my immediate knowledge with regard to the whereabouts at one time of a little girl whom I firmly believe to have been Eliza Carter, a clue which, if of any value, ought to have been quite sufficient to have secured the recovery of the unfortunate little girl. On Sunday, the 29th of January 1882, between 4 and 5 in the afternoon, a little girl, exactly corresponding in age, appearance, and every detail with the description given of Eliza Carter, was hurriedly dragged past me at the Recreation Grounds, Portsmouth, by a short, thick-set, repulsive-looking woman aged about 45 years, height 5 feet 2 or 3 inches, rather shabbily dressed, and broad across the shoulders. From the rapid strides taken and other reasons, I now think that it is possible that this person may have been a man in disguise of dwarfish stature. The little girl was in a hysterical state, and evidently in great alarm and distress, so much so that I wished to stop the woman and inquire the cause, but having only just landed with my regiment, and being in uniform and with a gentleman who strongly dissuaded me from interfering in the matter, I, to my last regret, refrained from doing so. A few days after this incident, I saw in London the printed handbills describing the particulars about Eliza Carter and her disappearance, and being shown a photograph, Messrs. Field and Nichols at their private inquiry office, of the child, I at once identified it as representing the same little girl whom I had seen being dragged along the streets of Portsmouth. Being then convinced of the identity of the child, I called at Scotland Yard and personally gave all the above particulars to the detectives there, urging prompt measures in the matter. After waiting 2 or 3 weeks without hearing the results of any investigation, I wrote direct to the Chief Constable at Portsmouth, who in his reply informed me that although every inquiry had been made, no satisfactory result had been arrived at. Then, being ordered to my present station in the north of Scotland, I was prevented from following up the matter any further. I am, sir, yours faithfully, P.F. Robertson, 2nd Major Battalion, Gordon Highlanders, Aberdeenshire. So, because this gentleman didn't help immediately with what was happening, and he let his friend persuade him not to help, the information that he took to the police was basically a bit too late. So, it would have been quite likely that if it was Eliza and she had been kidnapped to be trafficked, that they might have already left the country by this point, because if you don't know, that Portsmouth is, as its name suggests, it has a port there. But it was also suggested that the girls could become victims of a chemist who was also a poisoner. Now, this chemist had been caught trying to lure children away with him by promising them sweets that turned out had been drugged. So, of this story, the Belfast News says, the police at West Ham yesterday afternoon apprehended a man and woman at Stratford on the charge of enticing children away. The man's name is Warren, chemist and druggist, trading at Victoria Dock Road. On Saturday, he went in a cab with a woman to Great Eastern Road, Stratford, and then got out, leaving the woman in the cab, and walked towards Maryland Point School. He was observed by a gentleman named Harris, a contractor, trying to take a little girl away, whereupon the gentleman interfered. Eventually, both the man and the woman were arrested. Now, other young girls went missing in the area, and they were all mainly in the mid-teens. And because of this, it is highly likely that they were basically sex trafficked. But the bodies of some girls were found. So it could have been there might have just been a serial killer operating in the area at the time. Now, coming back to Amelia Jeffs, who we talked about at the beginning, it is suspected that a builder called Joseph Roberts had killed her. He was working in the house where she was found, but it's also suspected that his father Samuel had something to do with it as well, because he was a night watchman on the building site where she was found. But there wasn't actually enough evidence to convict either of them of Amelia Jeffs' death, so her death just went recorded of murder by person or persons unknown. The girl that was found in the box has never been identified. So that's a little video all about the disappearances of some girls in West Ham in the Victorian times. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.